In this country, they make babies cry on purpose. I know that sounds crazy, but it's actually a tradition. And if you lived in Japan, you wouldn't think twice about it. So why exactly do they do this? Hang tight. You'll find out in just a bit. This is Japan. The moment you set foot here, it's different enough to make you feel like you've landed on another planet. The trains don't run a single second late. The toilets are almost smarter than the people using them. And in Japan, you might just see someone doze off right in the middle of a business meeting. And here's the thing, you'll be the only one in the room who finds that strange. So buckle up. For the next few minutes, you're going to feel like you're in Japan. 1. The Japanese love affair with sleep. In Japan, you'll spot people fast asleep in a park, in a subway station, or even in the middle of a business meeting. The Japanese have a name for it, Inemuri, which basically means sleeping while you're present. And here's the surprising part. In Japanese culture, this isn't seen as being lazy, just the opposite. If you suddenly nod off, people read it as a sign of how hard you work. The logic goes something like this. This guy worked himself so hard, he passed out from exhaustion. So if your boss catches you dozing at your desk, instead of getting mad, he might just think, wow, he must be working really hard. Some people even fake a little nap just to look dedicated. But if you're going to pull that off, you'd better be careful, because the second someone asks you a question or you need to snap to attention, you've got to wake up instantly and jump right back into the meeting. Pull that off, and nobody's going to mind if you close your eyes for a bit. 2. Toilets straight out of the future. Walk into a bathroom in Japan and you might feel like you're sitting in the cockpit of a spaceship because there's a whole row of buttons next to the toilet. A button to heat up the seat, a button that cleans you, even a button that plays the sound of running water to cover up any embarrassing noises. If you're coming from another country, you might catch yourself thinking, all this technology just to use the bathroom? But trust me, you'll get used to it fast. And the day you finally leave Japan, you're going to seriously miss how comfortable those toilets are. 3. A whole ecosystem of shoes and slippers. In Japan, when you step into a temple, a home, a lot of traditional restaurants, or even a hotel, you might have to take off your shoes and put on a pair of indoor slippers. And it doesn't stop there. When you go into the bathroom, you take off your indoor slippers and switch into a separate pair made just for the toilet. And the golden rule is this: when you leave the bathroom, do not forget to leave those toilet slippers behind. Accidentally walking back into the living room in your toilet slippers? That's one of the most embarrassing mistakes you can make in Japan. 4. Vending machines that sell literally everything. In Japan, there's a vending machine on just about every corner. But these aren't your average machines with a few snacks in them. In Japanese vending machines, you'll find hot soup, hot coffee, ice cream, eggs, flowers, even umbrellas, and all kinds of other random stuff. And there are so many of them that in some neighborhoods, there are almost as many vending machines as there are people living there. 5. Workers whose job is to shove people onto trains. In a huge city like Tokyo, during the morning and evening rush hours, when everyone's heading to work or heading home, the trains get so packed that someone actually has to help get the door shut. That's where the osha come in. Staff in white gloves whose job, in theory, sounds simple, but in practice takes real effort and focus. Before the train pulls out, these workers gently push passengers deeper into the car so the doors can finally close. It might sound wild, but if you live in Tokyo, you get used to it pretty quickly. And in Japan, being an osha is a real job. They even get special training for it. 6. In Japan, tipping is considered rude. In a lot of places around the world, when you get good service, you leave the person a tip. And most of the time, that tip makes their day. But that's not how it works in Japan. If you're in Japan and you try to tip your waiter, they might be confused or even a little offended because in Japan, good service is just the standard. That's simply how the job is done. A waiter or any other worker in Japan isn't going the extra mile hoping for a tip. They're already doing their absolute best. If you leave money on the table, chances are the waiter will come chasing after you to hand it back, saying you forgot your money. So if you're in Japan and you're really happy with the service, instead of leaving cash, just go with a warm, sincere arigatou gozaimasu. It means thank you very much in Japanese. 7. Never talk on the phone on a train. When you hop on a train in Japan, one of the first things you'll notice is the incredible silence, even with a crowd packed inside. That's because talking loudly on public transit in Japan, and especially taking a phone call, is considered seriously rude. When people get on a train in Japan, they put their phones on silent, they text, but they never talk. Everyone goes out of their way not to bother the people around them. This little habit is one of the clearest signs of just how much Japanese culture values being considerate of others. 8. They never throw out broken things. In Japan, when something like a plate or a bowl breaks, people don't toss it in the trash. Instead, they turn to an art form called kintsugi to repair it. Kintsugi works by mixing gold dust into a special glue and using it to piece the broken object back together. And those cracks, they become part of the object's story. The repair lines aren't treated as a flaw or a defect. They're seen as something that makes the piece even more beautiful. In Japan, a broken object coming back more valuable and more beautiful than before says a lot about how the Japanese see life and the philosophy they live by. 9. The baby crying contest. And here we are, the thing I mentioned at the very beginning. In Japan, this is a tradition that goes back centuries. The way it works, sumo wrestlers hold babies in their arms and try to make them cry using funny faces and expressions. But they're not doing it to be mean. In Japan, it's believed that a baby crying loudly will bring that child a healthy, long life. That's exactly why the babies are put into a crying contest. Whichever baby cries the loudest and the hardest is crowned the winner. 10. Hoarding books you never read. If you're constantly buying new books but hardly ever actually read them, and they just keep piling up in a corner of your house, well, Japan is the place for you. In Japan, there's even a word for it, tsundoku, meaning books you buy and stack up in a corner without ever reading them. Japan has one of the highest numbers of authors per capita in the world, and a ton of new books come out there every year. So even though it's a country that reads a lot, plenty of those books end up sitting in a corner, never opened. If you ever find yourself in Japan someday, there's a good chance you'll run into all kinds of fascinating things, including everything I just talked about. And every one of those little surprises will amaze you and make you fall even more in love with Japan. By the way, I've got a special request for any Japanese friends watching this video. If I missed anything or got something wrong, drop the real story in the comments so you can set me and everyone else watching straight. And you, my friend, the one who stuck with me all the way to the end, what country are you watching from? Maybe the next video will be about yours. Last thing, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's the biggest support you could give me. See you in the next one.